I gave myself just one afternoon with the Spellbinders BetterPress System to finally find out if it's everything I'd hoped for. Hello creative friends, this tool has been sitting on my wish list for the longest time, and today I finally get to find out if it's been worth the wait. Today I'm sharing my first impressions of the Spellbinders BetterPress System. I finally have one here in the studio and an entire afternoon to create with it. Now, whether you're thinking about buying one or you already have one in your stash, this video is for you. I'll show you exactly how it works step by step and create some cards. I'll share the tricks I discovered along the way that will make a real difference to your end result. I've got so much to share today, including a couple of experiments. So let's get started. So for those of you that haven't seen this before, the BetterPress is a letterpress system from Spellbinders. And letterpress is a technique that gives you a debossed look and feel to your projects. It's really luxurious. I think of super fancy wedding invitations when I think of this technique. Up until fairly recently, getting that kind of result at home was not possible. This tool changes that. And today, I want to find out if it's as impressive and simple as it sounds. I'll start off by using the Spellbinders specialty branded supplies and then test out some alternatives. Let me show you exactly what comes in the box. So the thing I love the most about this is that when you order your letterpress system, you get everything you need to get started. The only assumption that Spellbinders have made is that you have a die cutting machine already. I'm using my Sizzix Big Shot, and there is a full list of compatible machines on their website. The very first thing you might want to look at is the operating instructions, and they have included this as a brochure. It's really well laid out actually, very clear, simple instructions that walk you through step by step how to use the machine. I'll also show you that today, so if you're a visual learner, keep watching. This is the carriage or the chase of the machine, and you'll also get to include inside it 3 shims. And from what I've seen, most machines do need these 3 shims, and you may need to take them out in the future, but depending on what kind of plates you use. This next part is a magnetic platform, and it slides on in here like so. The next thing you'll need is your cover plate, otherwise known as a platen, and you'll notice it has little round magnets here, and these line up perfectly with the magnets on the chase, and it actually snaps into position really beautifully. Like so. What you will notice is that the plate sits separate from the base here, and then as it goes through your Sizzix machine, it will press it down to create the image. Isn't that cool? Also included is a roll of the best ever craft tape, which I will talk about a little bit more later on in the video, and an exclusive die to use. They have even included 2 sentiments with the 2 different spellings of the word favorite. And yes, I have run this through the machine, which is why this plate looks slightly different to this one. This is my very first impression. So I wanted to save that to show you. Look how perfect that is. My first impression. Also, you will receive in your box a bunch of cardstock. Now, this is very special cardstock. This is the BetterPress cardstock, and you will get it in several of the colors that they offer. So there is 4 different colors of this card. There is porcelain, which is a really bright white. There's cotton ball, which is a standard white. There is bisque, which is a soft cream color. There's the cream compared to the white. And then there's this one called Pebble, which is a really, really pretty light grey. I'm just realizing I forgot one very important thing that was included in the box, the ink. Here it is, the BetterPress black ink pad. So you get a lovely ink pad that's ready to go, everything you need to make your very first impression. The only extra thing that I've bought are these extra colours of inks. These came as a set and there are lots and lots of choices of colours available. And I haven't used any of these yet. I've actually only just used the black so far. Now, before I start creating today, I do want to share with you the first 3 cards I've made with the BetterPress system. It's these 3 here, and I love how these turned out. So all 3 cards have been created with this BetterPress plate here. This one is from Spellbinders, and I'll link it below. It also came with this beautiful coordinating stencil set, which allows you to do all of the colouring really, really simply and gives you such a professional looking finish. Look how neat that is. Not because I'm neat, but because the stencil really helped me get that look. I've coloured this one with the ink and stencil as well. And then for something a little bit different, I used watercolours on this one. I really love that watercoloured, washed out look. It's so pretty. There's also a coordinating sentiment set that is a BetterPress plate as well, and I've used 3 of those. And I created these the same day that I opened the BetterPress. So they are impression maybe, I think, 4, 5, and 6. I have one impression that did not work, and I know exactly why that was. It was me, it was not the BetterPress, and I'll go through that later in the video as well. I am so happy with my very first session, which doesn't always happen when working with a new tool. Let me show you exactly how I got these results and the tricks you need to know up front. Tip number 1, paper matters more than you think. The type of paper you use in the BetterPress system dramatically changes your end result. To test this and show you the results, I do have several papers that I'll try today. This first one is the Spellbinders BetterPress paper, made especially for the BetterPress system. So it will be our control paper. It will achieve the best results according to Spellbinders. This next paper is Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock, and I use this quite a lot in my card making, so I did want to see how that would go. This one is American Crafts regular textured cardstock, and I have heard that if you use this with some regular paper towel that you can get a similar look, because the paper towel creates a bit of a cushion. So let's see if that works. Lucky last is this very inexpensive watercolor paper pad from Kmart. This is a cold pressed watercolor paper. It is 300 GSM, so really nice and thick. And I actually really like this paper for watercoloring. So it was in my stash already, and I'm super keen to give this a try. So with that all sorted, I think it's time to make our very first impression. And of course, we will use the BetterPress paper for that. Tip number 2, the ink matters almost as much as the paper. So of course, I'm going to try the BetterPress ink first. It's our control, but I had heard that this ink works equally as well, and I can kind of see why. This ink pad is very firm. It's got a very firm feel to it. I believe it's on felt. And then this ink pad seems to me to be very, very similar. Now, we've already established that I don't know anything about ink, but I have heard good things, and I do want to give this a try. Mostly because I already have this in my stash, and I think many of you do too. I think for science, I'll do all of the papers with the BetterPress ink because it is our control, and that will give us a good idea about how the different papers perform. And then I'll come back and do some testing with the VersaFine Clair later on in the video. If you're enjoying this video and would like to spend more time creating with me, press subscribe like a sticker to a scrapbook. It tells me that you're enjoying my videos and means you won't miss a thing. I will be working with this plate again. I would like to see how this goes with all of the other paper and ink options. And the first thing you want to do is place it onto your carriage. Now this is actually magnetic, so wherever you position it, it is going to stay put. And you do have these lovely guides here. So I am working with A2 paper, so I'm going to be able to visually see exactly where my impression's going to be on the card. Now I do have a plan for this, and I'm okay with the leaves running off the paper here. So that looks good. And as you can see, that's actually nicely magnetized down. It's not going to move anywhere. So before I get inking up, I will also want to position my paper. And the paper actually ends up being upside down like so. So it needs to be taped in position. And this is the BetterPress tape that comes with the starter kit. So I would absolutely recommend using this. I think in time you could maybe use washi tape or a cheaper option. Tip number 3, where you place your tape is important. So you want to keep your tape clear of anywhere where your impression will be. So for example, because my plate runs down the bottom here over the edge, I will not be putting my tape in this coordinating section. Same with the center. I would not choose to put tape in the center of the paper because I am going to have an impression there. You want your tape to be very clear of where you are going to be stamping. It does make a difference because the machine's so sensitive that you can sort of tell that the tape's behind the impression, if that makes sense. So I'm going to align this on my A2 marks, and then I'll put the smallest bit of tape ever in the corners. You may be able to get away with just 2, but I don't want to waste the paper because the paper's actually quite expensive. So I'd rather spend a little bit extra on tape to make sure that the paper is nice and secure. I'll just grab my Sizzix machine and then we can get to inking. So to ink up the plate, you want to use a motion that's like a smoosh and twist. So you want to kind of twist and press gently onto the plate, and you'll find that that's the best way to apply the ink. You will see it go on. So you'll know if it's working. It is all very firm, I must say. There's actually not a lot of give here. The plate's firm, the metal base is very firm, and the stamp is very firm. Now do be careful that you have ink everywhere because you don't get a second go at this. This is a one-time chance. So I'm going to do that and then position the paper on top. And you'll hear it sort of click into place. Tip number 4, don't press down on the plate. Now it is very important that you don't press the plate down as you're moving it to the Sizzix machine. You want the Sizzix machine to do all the work. So you just place the chase into your machine and then feed it through as you normally would. And it's all very soft and lovely actually. There's not a lot of force required there. It works beautifully. Again, I'm being careful not to press down on that plate. Here's the reveal. Isn't that beautiful? So if you are stamping up and you realize that you perhaps didn't add enough ink, you could technically, because this hasn't moved and this hasn't moved, re-ink the stamp and resend it through. At least that's what I thought. This is the result I got when I did that. See how it's like a shadow? So there is give there, there is movement there. So you really only get one pass. and the one pass has to be the pass that you make work. Isn't that nice? I hope you can see the impression that you get. So it's not just a flat image on flat paper. There is actually texture there. A debossed impression is made with the black ink being pressed into the paper. So that's our control done. Let's do one with Simon Hurley's cardstock. This cardstock is thinner and a lot less textured. So I'm interested to see how this goes. It is quite thick though, so I'm hoping that helps with the debossing. Let's see. That is beautiful, but I don't have debossing. Oh, I have a little bit. I have a little bit of the debossingness. On a scale, I would say this is obviously a 10 in debossingness. This would be, maybe a 2. I feel like this would be a 2 or a 3. Beautiful impression though. This is the Kmart watercolor paper, which I have cut to size, just so that everything is the same except for the paper. And you can see that you can reuse your little bits of tape as well. So be a little bit frugal with those. Did I not place that right, or did I not cut that right? Place. I did not place that right. There we go. Better. Okay, here we go. It's a beautiful impression. And I do have some debossedness. Yes, there's definitely some texture there. I feel like it's similar to the Simon Hurley one. In fact, yeah, very similar to the Simon Hurley one, I would say. I will also say that the ink sort of isn't as black. It kind of went into the paper a little bit more. The ink seems to be sitting more on the surface here and appears to be a little more black than on this paper. This ink seems to be more grey, but the cardstock is slightly different colour as well. I would be really interested to see how this looks with the paper towel underneath it, whether that little bit of extra softness might help with the impression. So let's test that too. So I have trimmed my paper towel to size, and I'm going to layer it in behind the cardstock I want to press onto, like so. Okay, so ink is still a little bit grey. It's the same paper as last time, so I wasn't expecting that to change. Debossedness feels similar. Maybe it did make a little bit of difference. These feel very, very similar. I don't know if I could tell them apart if they weren't marked. I do want to say this one may be ever so slightly better. Not even by a whole point, like half a mark better, I think. So I would obviously go Spellbinders first. I think maybe if I was watercoloring these images, if I knew I was going to watercolor them, I would maybe go watercolor paper with paper towel next, and then watercolor paper and then Simon's paper. but I do like how bright white Simon's paper is. And I think the impression is nicer because the ink is showing up a little bit darker, more black than it is on the watercolor paper. So lucky last, I will try this American Crafts card. I do not have high hopes for it at all, especially given the fact that I don't feel like the paper towel made that much difference. I might actually put 2 layers behind here just to see. It is the thinnest of the paper I've chosen and the one that I've got the least hope for. That feels a little bit soft. That could work. Okay. I am not a fan of this one. It is embossed. I don't know if you can see that on camera, or debossed, I should say. There is an impression there, and you can sort of see it on the back, maybe a little bit better than on the front. In real life, you can absolutely see it and you can feel it. I think maybe because it's a textured cardstock. Textured cardstocks never really stamp wonderfully. I'm not sure if you can see it there too, but it definitely has debossed, and this would work. Is it as nice as these other options? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think my favorite is obviously the original because you get the feel of the watercolor paper, but it is smooth. I guess like a hot pressed watercolor paper. And then this one I like because I actually do like the texture of it. It feels like watercolor paper, and I think it would go really, really nicely with a watercolored soft look if you're creating a card like that. And then if you wanted something super crispy and beautiful, I would maybe go with this. And here's another reminder why you don't run this through the machine more than once. You only get one go. So with all the testing of the BetterPress ink done, I do want to clean this up before we move on to that other ink. And cleaning up is really, really easy. So as you can see, it cleans up beautifully, and all I've used is this Stays On All-Purpose Stamp Cleaner and a soft cloth. Now, sometimes this does have a bit of a residue afterwards, so you can rinse this in water as well to remove that. Let's start this all over again, this time with the VersaFine Clear ink, and I am going to start with the Spellbinders paper. It does feel very similar. In fact, it feels a bit nicer because the ink pad is larger. It does seem to me as though the ink is transferring onto this plate a little bit easier. There's less pressing and smooching required. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is the control and this is the VersaFine Clear. The VersaFine Clear is a lot blacker, a lot deeper in color, but the details aren't as good. I feel like I was a little heavy-handed here. You can see there's some bleeding and there's some sort of sections that are less detailed perhaps. I feel like these lines are thicker. Part of the beauty of these plates is the softness in the print and the really fine detail. And I feel like this ink, or the way that I've applied it, maybe I was a little heavy-handed, but this ink makes those lines feel heavier. It's not as delicate. Let me know which one you would choose. I still think I would go with this one. I love the softness, and I think that's the selling point of these particular plates, is that delicate, soft design, and you are losing a little bit of that with these thicker lines from the VersaFine Clear ink. I have the Simon Hurley paper here. I think I might try that one as well, but I don't think I'll try this on the watercolor paper. I feel like that would make this even worse. I'm keen to see if this works because it is quite a flat textureless paper, and I feel like this ink could go very nicely with that. I'm really not sure how it would go on the watercolor paper. So this time I'll go a little lighter, see if that helps. I don't know if you can see that, but it's starting to get gunked up on the plate itself. I think it's even more obvious on this paper. The crispness gets lost. The lines get thicker and it's not as delicate. I mean, it works, but I don't think you're saving anything because this ink comes with the BetterPress. So even though you might have this in your stash, yes, you could use it, but I would still choose to use this. They are all very similar, but I would absolutely recommend just sticking with the Spellbinders product. I feel like it's true. You do get the most consistent results. So if you don't want to mess around and you don't want to risk things not working, you just want to get in and get creating, just stick to the Spellbinders paper and ink. Tip number 5, let's talk about coloring images. It's time for the funnest part, and because this is a permanent waterproof ink, I am going to be using a water-based medium, and I want to show you how you can watercolor with these, so you can watercolor in these beautiful images. But then I also want to show you the stencil that comes with a set and some stencil brushes and show you how that would look as well. I think I'll use the Kmart paper for the watercoloring just because it is watercolor paper. So this is the one with the paper towel. I'm just going to add a little bit of this ink into here and here. How pretty is this color combination? And then for the green leaves, this green. So I think I'll go blue here. I do want this to be quite loose. I don't like my watercoloring to be perfect. I feel like the really loose style of coloring in watercolors is the most pretty. And I'll let that dry a little bit and then I'll come back and add some more color in there. Let's do this one as well in this very pretty periwinkle blue. I would normally go for a pink or a warm color, but I am trying to stretch myself a little bit and explore some different color combinations lately. And then we'll go with this soft lilac. I love that. That's really nice. See if I can get some more saturation in the purple. See if I can add a little bit more depth to the purple. It is quite a pale shade. Lovely. And then for the green, I'll just add a little bit of the green, I think. This brush is possibly a little bit big for this, but I'll make it work. I think I'll just add a little bit of really pale green behind here, just to color that background in a little bit. So that's that. I will let that dry. So the only bleeding that's happening here is the watercolors in with each other. The ink is not moving at all because it is a waterproof ink. Having said that, what you can't do is use alcohol markers. Alcohol markers will move the ink and will bleed the ink and ruin your image. So just make sure that you're only ever using a water-based pigment for your coloring. Let's set that aside. That's pretty. For the stencils, I'm going to use my Misty with my sticky mat, and I think I might work with the Simon Hurley cardstock. It's really smooth and I think it will give a really nice finish. So I'm just going to add that in the center here. maybe here. So the stencils are numbered 1 through 5, and all I do is line up these parts here on my stamped image. I found I get much better results lining up with the image rather than lining up with these outside marks. See, that one's quite a lot out. I'll then grab my brushes. I do like this set because you can have one for each of the color inks you're working with. This mat will also keep the stencil in place, and just a round motion. Let's see. Isn't that pretty? A very different look from the watercolor, but equally as beautiful, I think. And here's what our beautifully colored images look like on cards. Aren't they pretty? So this is obviously the watercolor one on the watercolor paper. I have added a stitched border and a sentiment that coordinates with the florals. And then just a couple of enamel dots, and that one was done. For this one, I did fussy cut out the stamped image and then placed it on this contrasting cardstock. This is actually a die from Spellbinders as well. And then again, a coordinating sentiment and the enamel dots. I can't decide which one's my favorite, so you let me know yours in the comments below. Okay, I have saved the very best tip till last because this next idea will completely change how you think about this system. The big surprise? You have far more options than you think. Your BetterPress plates aren't just for the letterpress. If you run regular cardstock through the press, you'll end up with a beautifully flat and detailed stamped image instead of the embossed look. But you can also use your BetterPress plates in a glimmer foiling machine. How good is that? Now, it is very important to remember that this is a one-way street. So your BetterPress plates can be used in the press and then also on your glimmer machine, but your glimmer plates cannot be used in the BetterPress. The big takeaway here is that the BetterPress plates are the best ones to get because they will give you the most versatility. So I guess the next big question is, do I now need a foiling machine? Should I get one? And if I should, let me know which brands. I would love to know your experience, so share that with me in the comments. At least I do have the BetterPress plates, so I do have that option moving forward. So after an entire afternoon with the BetterPress, my final thoughts? I love it. I really love it. The results right out of the box were better than I expected. And there wasn't even really a learning curve, except for the tips I've just shared with you. If you've been sitting on the fence unsure about the BetterPress system, I really hope today's video helped. I'll be sure to leave links in the description box below to all of the supplies I've used so you can find them easily. Now that you've seen what the BetterPress system can do, you might be wondering what other essential craft tools belong in a well-stocked craft room. I just shared 22 of my must-have paper crafting tools, including the BetterPress, and one tool I use all the time that costs less than a cup of coffee. Be sure to watch that video next to discover what that tool is. Thank you so much for being here, my creative friend. I'll see you again really soon. Until then, bye!